Welcome back to Rugby World Cup today, brought to you by Kubota. Kubota's in-stock catalogue is out now, and it's a pleasure to welcome into the show, live from South Africa, Stephen from Forever Sports, and they've done some great work throughout this Rugby World Cup. Mate, it's a huge game this week, two proud rugby nations. Can you give us a bit of an insight into how the build-up to the clash is over there? Because I can imagine Springbok fans are getting pretty excited.
Yeah, I mean, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's everything, isn't it? I mean, it's the final that we all wanted. It's the old foe, as we always mention. You know, it's the only team that has a positive win record against the Boks. So it's the team that we all want to play in the final, but also the team we sort of fear the most or get nervous about, because it's the team that we know that can beat us, but also the team that we know we can beat. So it's been an interesting week. A lot of tension, I think, and a lot of nerves based on how we've had to sort of squeeze through to a quarterfinal and a semi-final. So a lot of worry a little bit about the squad, but I think generally it's just excitement. I don't think anybody really thought we were going to get to the final. I think a lot of people were very optimistic and stuff. But I think, when you see the fact that they have to play, you have to be a France and then things were good and stuff like that. So I think it's a bit of a shell shock after the weekend, but now the excitement's starting to ramp up.
Yeah, you mentioned then the weekend. Obviously, two quite contrasting games in the semi-final and the quarterfinal. The quarterfinal was quite an exciting watch. The Springboks played a lot of rugby because I guess the French allowed them to. But on the weekend, England kind of dragged them into that arm wrestle. How are you expecting the side to want to play this week? Do you expect more of that kind of French style of footy? Or do you think she's going to be, again, another kicking and forward-dominated battle?
Yeah, I think what's been quite interesting is how we've had to adjust to play against the opposition. So I think obviously England played the conditions over the weekend and sort of brought us into almost a 10-man game. And as you mentioned, that sort of arm wrestle, very sort of physical, very tactical. I think we've had to adjust partly to the conditions, but a lot to the team in front of us. And I think that this weekend, I don't think the All Blacks are going to be the team that are going to try and deploy the similar tactics to England. So I do expect to be a much more open game. I do think there'll be space for both teams. I think conditions will obviously necessitate a little bit of more so maybe tactical news than what we used to see. But yeah, I think a lot of it will have to depend on the opposition. I think the most frustrating thing is the Boks haven't been able to play the way they wanted to play over the last 2 weeks. And I think that's probably something that they'll look to really try and do on Saturday, be able to sort of control the game a bit more and be able to dictate how they want to play and not just respond to the opposition.
I mentioned before, two proud rugby nations. The rivalry and respect between the All Blacks and South Africa is second to none in my books. Can you touch a little on how South African rugby fans kind of view the All Blacks? Because I remember being over in South Africa 10 to 15 years ago, and I was surprised to see how many black jerseys there were just walking the streets.
Yeah, it's a very strange dynamic down here. There's a massive All Black support down here, and a lot of it was, during the apartheid years, a lot of people didn't support South Africa very specifically, and very much went, supported the All Blacks. And these days, we still see a lot of people, growing up, watching New Zealand, watching the way they play, loving that sort of style. So there is a big support base down here in the country, and I think it's. Even the Springbok fans, it's the game we look forward to. I think it's one of those every year, the pictures come out and you circle that Springboks All Blacks clash in the calendar, because we all know that's the game of the year for us. It doesn't matter where it is, it doesn't matter what's on the line. I mean, for example, if the Rugby Championship's already gone by the time we play, it doesn't matter. It's the game we all absolutely love. It's the game that we, at the end of the day, it's one of those things where I think if you ask a South African if they are willing to lose every single game that year but beat New Zealand, a lot of them would probably say yes. It's that big of a game. It's one of those games where if there's one game a year that we want to win and we have to win, it's a game against the All Blacks.
There's so many matchups across the park, isn't there, especially in that forward pack, and it's an old cliche, but often the game is one up front when these two sides clash. So is that how you see it? The team that kind of dominates up front, stronger set piece, stronger around ruck time, will go a long way to winning this game?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think for me, that's been the biggest hallmark of the All Blacks side's improvement and sort of the turnaround. I think that they've really, the pack has really stood up, and I think you think of the New Zealand teams of old, they've always had such terrific front rows and they've always tacked so well from set piece. So I think that, I do think it is going to be one up front. I think that is, we saw in August, the 7-1 split versus the 6-2 split. I mean, there were only 3 backline players across both benches, as it becomes such a forward-dominated game. So I do think it'll be very much like that this weekend. I think it's something that it's such a proud thing for South Africa to be so physical and to have the dominance that teams, I think, are so ready to try and take that away to see if the Boks will panic. And I do still think that the Boks have got the most dominant pack in the world on that day when they picked up and off the bench. But I do think that's an area that's been so improved and focused on by the All Blacks. And there's been some great players and there's been some great campaigns. And I think what's exciting me the most about this weekend is how many players, especially in the pack, have come into form recently in the forms. You look at the All Blacks, the way that Sam Cane has played in the last couple of weeks, the way that Sam Whitelock has sort of rolled back the years. And from a stats perspective, you're starting to see the best of. We've seen some really good performance from even Estabet, for example. Dwayne Simeone's come back and sort of showing his experience, the explosiveness of an Oxen Chair off the bench. So there's so many different individual matchups that it's just every single time you look at a potential matchup, the lineup battle, the scrum battle, it's so 50-50 or there might be an edge in the lineup and an edge in the scrum. And it's so difficult to call, which is what I think makes it so exciting.
100%. I'm just starting to get excited hearing you talk about those matchups, but it is 1-1 so far this year. The teams have played twice and they've split them. It's typically been the team that started quicker that's ended up winning the game. I think both sides who were leading by the 20-minute mark went on to win. Do you think the Boks take extra confidence in from that Twickenham demolishing, or do you think the All Blacks were missing a few players? Rugby World Cup final, it's just back to square.
Yeah, I think it is one of those things where, previous results don't really come into it, but I think we'd all be lying to ourselves if you think that there aren't conversations happening in both camps with the Boks saying, we've beaten them before and, a couple of extra players aren't going to make them a different side, Similarly, I think the All Blacks will be sitting there thinking, as much as they'll tell the press, and both sides will say that they're not thinking about it, there's no way that Ian Foster isn't saying to their team, listen, you guys got pumped in August. It was the biggest defeat ever, You've got a chance to change that sort of legacy. So I do think that it's going to come down to a team that starts well. And although I think that, South Africa, the Boks have proven in the last 2 weeks that they're an 80-minute side, which has sometimes been something that the All Blacks have been guilty of not being. And sometimes that's been okay for them because they've been able to start so well. They've been able to put the game to bed by 20, 30 minutes. And we've seen that during the World Cup, but they've started like houses on fire in so many different games. And, the game's almost won. But the longer the game goes, I think sometimes that's where sometimes the New Zealand have sometimes faded, but then they sort of turn that corner against Ireland where they managed to hold out. So I think that, for the Boks, they know that they can finish strong, but they're playing against a side which always likes to start strong. So I do think that if New Zealand get going very early and put the Boks away, that it could be still game on, but that could be the game. But I do think that if the Boks start really well, that they do tend to finish better. So I think 20-25 minutes, if the game's in the balance, then I think we're in for a cracker.
Part of that finishing strong is, of course, your infamous bomb squad, which, they established a reputation for themselves for closing out games. What is about this bench unit? Because they're kind of feared across world rugby, aren't they? Everyone knows if they're within touching distance, on comes the bomb squad and often goes your guys' way.
Yeah, and I think what's been so interesting about this tournament is that the Bomb Squad was the nickname given to the 6-2 split back in 2019. But we've now just seen, 2 weekends where we haven't gone the 6-2 split. We've gone an orthodox 5-3 split, and yet the bench has still had the impact. And we've seen impact performances come from the backline. So it's been quite interesting to see the genesis of it becoming from a Bomb Squad in terms of the forwards just coming on and dominating to just the bench as a whole. And I think it does speak to the depth that the Boks have at the moment, which I don't think we've ever been blessed to have this sort of depth where there is so little between the starters and the finishers. And I think that the management have very much identified players who can cause an impact later in the game, and they almost select for that. And that's why I think it's been the success. And I think a lot of it as well, it becomes almost a mental thing. It's you've built yourself and you've proven yourself so many times that you're going to have this impact, that there's this genuine belief that if they're 10 points down and you walk on with your 5 subs, that you guys are sitting there walking on saying, well, this is what we're here for. This is, why we panic. This is why they have us. And I think there's that confidence of we can turn around any sort of score, which I think is something that you can't just get overnight. It's been earned over the last few weeks, and I think I don't think it's necessarily down to the players themselves individually. It's just as a unit, they sit there saying, well, we've got this reputation. This is what we do. We can win games from behind because we believe we can.
That's a great point. And obviously you mentioned before it's been a bit of a different build-up. The Bongi allegations have kind of been a bit of an unwanted story, but I just wanted to ask how important he is to this team. Obviously we saw Malcolm Marx go out pre-tournament with that knee injury, But he's a bit of a leader, isn't he? When Khaleesi goes off, he appears to take over the captaincy role. So how important is it that he's out on the paddock?
Well, I think what's been the most frustrating thing and the most nerve-wracking thing is that he's probably our most irreplaceable player right now. You know, I think there's so much depth across the entire 33-man squad, but the lots of Malcolm Marks are not calling up a like replacement in terms of a hooker who's been playing there recently. I mean, Deontay Reed was a hooker by trade early on in his career. I think Bongi's had a bit of a revolution this year. I think he started the season a bit off, but they've given him this extra responsibility. It was interesting. I was in the press conference when they first mentioned of the captain option, and I think everybody kind of raised their eyebrows and never really thought about him as being a genuine captain option. He hasn't really captained at domestic level either. But I think that they've gone and placed this responsibility on his shoulders, and I think he's between that and the injury to Malcolm Marks, I think he's just found a whole different level to his game. I think it's funny how that's what this management's been so good at, identifying how like small aspects to be able to bring out the best in people. And I think, he's been absolutely terrific. The last couple of games, he's been faultless. I think he played a full 80 last weekend, which you don't often see from a hooker. And I think from a leadership point of view, he's always had that bit of that sort of that. I wouldn't say darker side, but he's always had that sort of that top dog mentality type thing, where sometimes he can be very confrontational, and as previously in his career, sort of maybe chirped us or maybe said the wrong things. And I think they've embraced it and said, right, well, we're going to give you the responsibility. I need to know what you can and can't say, and we're actually going to say, right, well, instead of you're not seeing a player of 50, 60 caps, we're going to give you this responsibility. How do you handle it? And I think he's proven that he's taken it with both hands and handled very well. It's not been the week we wanted to see. My understanding is that he is up for selection and that we're sitting on, a couple of days before the game and there's no update. So I don't think we'll see a ban. But yeah, I think he's just been so important to the box from a leadership and from a positional point of view. And I genuinely think he's probably the one player, if you could say which player can we not afford to lose this weekend, it's probably him.
Yeah, interesting stuff. One player I wanted to touch on before I let you go, mate, is your captain, Siya Kolisi. I said on yesterday's show, he's probably one of the great leaders in world sport, not just at the moment, but in general. I love listening to him talk. He always kind of reverts every win back to his people. He's just so inspiring and he always speaks so much sense. Can you talk a little about the regard he's held amongst in South African rugby?
Well, I think there's a genuine feeling in the country that if you were to go into politics and run for president, he'd probably get it, just based on the fact that nobody would be able to not vote for him. He's absolutely adored, and it's so difficult to sort of show more than what people see. I mean, as you mentioned, every single time he gives an interview, he's so humble. He throws it back to people. But I think the biggest thing about him is he's so real. He's so raw. He's so willing to admit his fault and to admit that he's made so many mistakes in his life and that he's not a perfect person, but he's tried to learn. And I mean, a small anecdote of the type of person he is, if you go to a press conference like in South Africa, and he always does the Friday press conference, the captain's press conference, he will arrive 5 to 10 minutes early so that he can make sure he goes to every single journalist, cameraman, anyone there, and he'll personally greet them, he'll shake their hand, ask them how they're doing, he'll go around to every single one before he sits down for the press conference.
Wow.
Which is just a small sort of example of the type of person he is. He's just phenomenal.
Yeah, he's hard not to like, isn't he? Although this weekend, of course, he'll be a rival, but you can't help but cheer for him as well. Finally, mate, can we get a prediction for you? How do you think it's going to play out? Who takes home the Webb Ellis Cup and becomes the first nation to win it 4 times?
Well, I have to go with my heart, and I have to say that we're going to do it. We've never lost a final, and I'd like us to keep that record going this weekend. I do think it's going to be very close, so I'm going to go with South Africa by 6 points. I think it'll be within a converted try, but I'm going to go with my heart and say that we're going to put in one big final effort, and we're going to bring it back.
Yeah, good on you. You got to go with the heart. Well, appreciate your time, Stephen, mate. Love getting some insight out of South Africa. I've been enjoying all the content out of Forever Sports as well. So all the best on the weekend. May the best team win. And fingers crossed for us here in New Zealand. It's the All Blacks. But I will say, if anyone else was going to win it, it would have been South Africa in our books. So good luck, mate.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, guys. Good luck to you guys.